I'm just going to briefly cover repeater operation. A lot of people like to use repeaters, 2 meters, 70 centimeters, some on 6 meters and some on 10 meters. Very interesting those are. At the time of recording, the repeater over in New York is coming in quite nicely on 29620. Not at the moment because it's dark here in the UK, but certainly this afternoon it was coming in rather well. So we tune the radio to the repeater output frequency, which is the one that you listen to, and then we go into the menu here. If your menu isn't showing, you just press the FM list button. I have my menu on by default because I find the spectrum scope to be completely useless. We can press the tone DCS button for various tone transmissions. So if it's set to ENC encode, I imagine, that encodes a CTCSS tone, where it puts a CTCSS tone on your transmission. If I press tone DCS again, it says CTCSS. Now that is still CTCSS, but now there's tone squelch on there, so I can only receive stations that are transmitting the correct subaudible tone. There's also digital code squelch, which I've never used. That's DENC. DENC only encodes the DCS, and DCS encodes and squelches the receive unless the correct DCS code has been transmitted by the station that you are trying to receive. I've never used DCS. We'll leave it on encode for the time being. I can't pick the repeater up at the moment, there's no propagation. Hit the repeat button, and it's on simp at the moment, which means simplex. For press repeat, it goes to plus, which means when I transmit, it tries to transmit on 29720, which is out of band, so the Yaesu stops me from doing that. If I press repeat again, it goes to minus or negative, and I press PTT, and it sets the radio up so that I transmit on 29520 and receive on 29620. To change the DCS or CTCSS tone, just find the right menu option, which is the next menu forwards, and the CTCSS tone can be altered by hitting tone and then scrolling through all the options. And DCS can be altered as well by hitting DCS and scrolling through all the options there. That's quite useful. You'll also notice that ENC is shown there, and minus as well, ENC, DEC, ENC, DCS and so on. So yeah, that's quite good. Just show you the spectrum scope. The receive and transmit frequencies are displayed there as the red and green little flags there. If I press the repeat button to display minus, you'll see that there is a negative offset, and there's actually 2 arrows pointing left or down in frequency to show that the transmit frequency is down there. It's lower than the receive frequency. We'll just change the spectrum scope frequency span. It's set to 100 kilohertz on mine, so let's bump that up to 1 megahertz and go back to it, and it will show a red line and a red flag where the transmit frequency is, and a green line and flag where the receive frequency is in relation to everything else. And that goes for all split frequency operation. It will show on the spectrum scope where the transmit and receive frequencies are. The repeater shifts can be altered as well. Menu items 80, 81 and 82 and 83 set the 28 MHz, 50 MHz, 144 MHz and 430 MHz repeater shifts, and the defaults on my radio, being the UK version, are 100 kHz, 1 MHz, 600 kHz and 1.6 MHz respectively. Some repeaters on the 70 centimeter band do have a 7.6 MHz shift, but they can be altered quite nicely. It can be altered And just altering the 28 megahertz up to 1 megahertz, that can be changed. That's quite good. The 70 centimeter option goes a long way. Should cover 7.6 megahertz. Takes some getting there though. Yeah, goes past 7.6 megahertz actually. Yeah, you can have a repeater shift up to 10 megahertz if you ever need one. I suppose you could use that as some sort of split frequency operation that's not repeater related. Use your imagination, I suppose. Try and get that back down to 1.6 so I don't get confused if I ever use that. There we are, that's the default. It is as simple as that. If we want to, if you just press the reverse button, you can listen to the repeater's input frequency to check for activity. And just hit reverse again and it's back to normal. In reverse mode, if you try to transmit, you transmit on the repeater output frequency. So that's worth bearing in mind because you don't want to do that. There is an automatic repeater shift option. The way this is programmed is, if I just go to simplex, if I go to the 2 meter band, you can see that if I tune away from the repeater part of the spectrum, there's no minus or plus or any other symbols on the display here. Although I am in C4 FM, that doesn't matter. If I increase the frequency so that I have tuned into the repeater part of the band, and minus has already displayed there. So if I were to transmit, the correct repeater shift would be activated. And that goes all the way through the repeater section until I come out the other side back to simplex, or the satellite section there. Which is quite useful. That can be turned on and off. If we go into the menu items 84 and 85, can switch the automatic repeater shift on or off. Menu item 84 is for the 2 meter band and menu item 85 is for the 70 centimeter band. Finally, regarding the repeater access side of things, is the 1750 Hz tone burst function, which I'll just demonstrate rather quickly. If you go into the menu by pressing FM list and you find the T-call option on the display, if you press and hold it, a 1750 Hz tone burst will be transmitted. Like that. And then once you've gained access to the repeater, you can use the usual push to talk button to carry on with your conversation. I don't believe the radio can be set up to transmit the tone burst when you press PTT. I don't know why, but that's the way it is. Of course, we've looked at the CTCSS and DCS options, and they can be used in simplex communication as well, not just repeaters. You can use them to squelch out other stations on the same frequency if you so wish. While we're just using FM and talking about different types of squelch, there is the normal squelch as well, and that's SQL option, which is there on the menu, SQL, and we can hold down SQL off, which strangely enough is on a different page. That's why I've got it at the bottom. Hold down SQL off, you can monitor the frequency without squelch, like that. That's just a quick look at squelch. This is the KQ2H Repeater in New York, coming through on 10 meters on a Saturday afternoon in January, and I've set up the tone setting to CTCSS, which means that I can use the CTCSS tone squelch on receive. I'll just try and demonstrate that. The tone is set to 146.2 Hz, which means the receiver is looking for that frequency of tone on receive. If it does not get that frequency of tone, then it squelches the audio, and I'll demonstrate that. The signal's just fading out at the moment. If I change the tone to something else, it stops the audio coming through. If I go back to 146.2 Hz, the audio starts to work again. Typically the signal has faded out somewhat, so it's difficult to demonstrate. There's the repeater coming in. Change the tone, it is inaudible, although the signal is there, as you can see on the meter. Turn the tone back and it's there. Another way of demonstrating this, the tone is set to the correct frequency, the repeater's coming in. If I detune, the audio will be cut. And that's because there is no 146.2 Hz tone on that frequency. Because changing the tone setting will bring the audio back to CTCSS, and the audio is cut until I tune into that repeater again, and the signal's there. There it is. It's struggling a bit because the signal is quite weak, but that demonstrates the CTCSS tone squelch for your repeater operation. I think that's it. I hope you found that interesting. I hope I've covered everything. There's quite a lot to cover there. Different methods of achieving similar results, and certain methods that really do work well in certain situations. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again in the next video. Have fun with your FT-991A, and I'll see you again. Bye bye.